Okay, welcome to the channel. I thank you guys for tuning in on today. I want to say a special thank you to those of you who are subscribed to this channel or who watch on a regular basis, who really get and understand what I share, who are just into what I share, and the person who's not afraid of associating with what I share. Okay, so I want to say a special thank you to you guys. Okay, I do get comments. I hold my comments. And so I have a purpose for doing that. I also often sometimes close the comments, but I hold them because I like to see people's uh, independent thought. And I find that sometimes if the comments are open, I'll open them up later, or I may choose not to, but most often I'll open them up later. But when I release a share, sometimes I like to close them or just hold them so that I can see a person's independent thought. Okay, and not just, the thoughts of someone who's feeding off what others have written. And so I really do appreciate you guys. I appreciate what you share, and thank you for tuning in on today. All right, so I have a question for those who are African American, especially African Americans on the continent, in Ghana, around the world. Did you receive your invitation? Did you get your invitation? Have you received your invitation to the reparations discussion that the African Union is having? Okay. The African Union is having a reparations discussion about you, about your ancestors. All right. And they've invited themselves. They've even invited our Jamaican brethren. hmm But where's our invitation? I didn't get mine, so I'm wondering if you got yours. There's so many of us who are in Ghana, who have been to Ghana. This is the main place that many people come to when they're making their first entry to the continent of Africa. And yeah, so I just wondered if you guys received your invitation, because it appears that the scheduled meeting, which if you did not know, Ghana will be hosting the reparations discussion in 2023, actually next month. It'll be held next month here in Ghana. Let me get the exact dates for you. Hold on one second. Yeah, November 14th through 17th. And let me give you just a little background, and then I'm going to show you why it is important for us to speak up about not being invited, because your friends have been invited, your brothers and sisters have been invited, all right? Your fellow Africans have been invited, but you, African American as a whole, have not been invited, all right? And so I think it's very important if someone's going to be asking for money on the behalf of us and calling us their African brethren and people who have been taken from the continent, that we be invited to the discussion and we be invited to share our thoughts on what we would like to see done, or even if we would like to even have that discussion or have them represent us in that discussion. I have done a share, and I personally feel that unless the African continent first shows that they themselves are going to provide reparations of some sort to us, then I don't think they should go and talk to anyone else on our behalf about that. Okay, but that's another discussion, and I've already had it, but perhaps we can continue it because it doesn't end there. There's a whole lot to say on it. But here's what's going to be going on. The Accra Reparations Conference, ARC, is scheduled to hold at the Kempinski Gold Coast Hotel in Accra, Ghana, from the 14th through the 17th of November 2023, under the theme Building a United Front to Advance the Cause of Justice and the Payment of Reparations to Africans. Payment of reparations to Africans. Okay. The conference is co-organized by the African Union Commission and the government of the Republic of Ghana to promote dialogue, knowledge sharing, and actionable strategies among diverse and relevant stakeholders on the way forward regarding addressing historical injustices against Africans and the people of African descent through the slave trade, colonialism, etc. ARC 2023 intends to bring together all ongoing and past efforts on the topic of reparations in order to forge a united front to advance the cause of reparatory justice. An African committee of experts on reparations drawn from relevant fields, including law, will be established for the purpose of developing a common African position on reparations and incorporate therein an African reparatory program of action. The committee, among other things, will collaborate with the Caribbean community. All right, so the committee, the African Union, all right, of these presidents, and the committee that they put together will collaborate with the Caribbean community, CARICOM, to establish an African Caribbean joint mechanism on reparatory justice based on the resolve of the Global African Diaspora Summit held in South Africa in 2012. And you know what I just thought of? Forgive me to my those who are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade who are in Europe and other places. Were you invited? Were you invited to this discussion? Sounds like only our Caribbean brethren were invited to this discussion, and this is nothing against them. We are one, all right? So we're not going to turn on them, but we are going to turn to the African Union and say, how can you hold this discussion without inviting all of us, okay? How can you? This should be an open discussion. There should be, a major conference center to hold these discussions. And just for the record, we don't have any official representative here in Ghana or on the African continent that speaks for us. Oftentimes we see in America, for example, they will choose their own black person. They will choose somebody to speak for us. We don't have any official person that's going to speak for us. Okay, none that we have selected as a people to speak what we are speaking, okay? Not what they want to speak or what you have told them to speak, okay? There's no such person. But I find it interesting that those who are in Europe and those in the Americas have not been included. Not even those in South America have been included in Central America in this discussion. How can you hold a conference and not even, let's just say for the major or the larger places, Brazil, Americas, in the UK, and not invite representatives from those places? That's really, really odd. All right. And so let me continue. To assist the committee, they've invited the CARICOM, all right, the Caribbean Joint Mechanism and Reparatory Justice based on the resolve of the Global African Diaspora Summit held in South Africa in 2012. To assist the committee in the discharge of its mandate, a global reparations fund will be created. Let me see if I missed this. To assist the committee in the discharge of its mandate, a global reparations fund will be created. All right. So, yeah, before anyone discusses us, because it is about us, it is about our experience, not just us. It includes our Caribbean brothers and sisters throughout all of the Caribbean, but it also includes our UK brothers and sisters who have never stepped their foot on the African continent. They are truly descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, all right, and can prove so. I'm talking about people who can prove that they descended from those who are persons taken from the transatlantic slave trade, are descendants of those descendants who were taken in the transatlantic slave trade. All right. Some of us are only 2 generations or 2 parents or grandparents away from someone who was born in slavery. Okay. And so it's very important to talk with us. It's also speak with all of us. And it's very important also for Africa to take the first step. We cannot expect the West and those who took our ancestors captive, all right, and enslaved them, got free labor from them, built their nations and their countries off of them, and are still benefiting from their labor. We cannot expect them only to pay if Africa is not leading the way. All right, if Africa needs to lead the way in reparations by first doing away with visas to those who can prove that they are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. Why are we still paying for visas to come to the country? There should be some sort of reparations in the form of, we're not asking for free things that the citizens of countries are not getting free, but in the form of land grants, right? Not land that's supposed to be free and the price is going up every year. And that's not to knock the efforts that have been made. I appreciate the efforts that have been made by those who have made them, but I'm talking about real land grants, okay? Real business opportunities where we can come and do business and not necessarily have to hire someone to be a face of our business, all right? Real grants to subsidize businesses. Once again, we're not asking for anything free, okay? We're bringing our talents and our money to get those business going, but also we're asking for things that would not only benefit us, but will benefit the nation itself. And these are discussions that need to be held not with just a select few, all right? Not with just a select few. And I have my thoughts on why they kind of favor a select few. I think I'll just, be really transparent. No, I'm going to hold that for another time because some people are not going to really hear what I'm saying, and that may take us into another discussion, okay? And once again, it's not my purpose to bring division, but to bring unity around the truth and around what's fair and what's right. And what's fair and right in this situation is to not have a discussion about us and not invite us, not to represent us and not we ourselves are not represented in a discussion, and not to even find out if we at first want you to represent us. Okay, perhaps you should only represent Africa, but then you can't do that without discussing us. You can't do that. You can discuss the colonialism aspect of it. You can do that, but you cannot have a discussion on reparations about the people, your people that were taken and nations were built. Let me just let you listen to something that was said by the president of Ghana, all right, and see what his stance on. And I thank those who are still listening to this. All right, so hold on just a moment.
Of the transatlantic slave trade.
It is time to acknowledge openly that much of Europe and the United States have been built from the vast wealth harvested from the sweat, tears, blood, and horrors of the transatlantic slave trade and the centuries of colonial exploitation. Maybe we should also admit that it cannot be easy to build confident and prosperous societies from nations that for centuries have their natural resources looted and their peoples traded as commodities. For centuries, the world has been unwilling and unable to confront the realities of the consequences of the slave trade. But gradually, and it is time to bring the subject of reparations firmly to the fore. Granted, the current generations are not the ones that engaged in the slave trade, but that grand inhuman enterprise was state-sponsored and deliberate, and its benefits are clearly interwoven with the present-day economic architecture of the nations that designed and executed it. Reparations must be paid for the slave trade. No amount of money will ever make up for the horrors, but it would make the point that evil was perpetrated, that millions of productive Africans were snatched from the embrace of our continent and put to work in the Americas and the Caribbean without compensation for their labor. If there are any hesitations in some minds about the paying of reparations, it is worth considering the fact that when slavery was abolished, the slave owners were compensated for the loss of the slaves because the human beings were labeled as property, deemed to be commodities. Surely, this is a matter that the world must confront and can no longer ignore. The African Union has authorized Ghana to hold a global conference on the issue in November in Accra. Slave trade.
All right, and that was well spoken by the president of Ghana. All right, reparations must be paid, all right, for the slave trade, but reparations must be paid from all sides. Okay, before there's truly full reconciliation, there has to be reparations. Now, what are we really asking for? I know from my own perspective and that of many that I've heard, we're just asking to be treated as if we belonged here on this continent, as if our ancestors were literally taken from this continent, right? And not as strangers. There's no difference when we return here than between us and someone from Sweden. All right, maybe they may even have better opportunities, all right? But let's just say someone from Canada. I have to pay for a visa. I have to pay so-called right of abode, right? There are fees that are associated with this. Residency fees that are associated with this. If you decide that you want to settle in Ghana and become a citizen, it doesn't matter that you are from here. There are fees that are associated with this. When you purchase land, you don't get equal opportunities in purchasing land. Now, Ghana is a leasehold system, so everyone is under a leasehold for the most part, right? But our terms are shorter. 50 years is a short period of time compared to 99 years. And also, I think it needs to be overhauled for everyone, okay? Indentures, all indentures should clearly state what the renewal amount will be, all right, and not based on some future value that your future generations will not be able to pay, okay? But that's another discussion. So, but it's also a part of this discussion, meaning that we're not asking so much for preferential treatment. We're asking for equal rights, all right, the same as the citizens here, but we're also asking for consideration that something was lost in the entire process. A lot was lost. And so because there were things that were lost, we ask for consideration when it comes to businesses, when we're establishing businesses. We ask that we not be charged exorbitant fees to just start a business or to have a business in our own name. We ask that with land that we would be considered equal. These are just some of the things, and there are many, many others. So I won't start naming because I'm sure I'm going to name a lot. Forget to name many things, okay? But visas coming to the country, we shouldn't have to pay visas to come. All right, it should be visa free if you're a descendant of the African continent, and that's for all countries, not just Ghana. I love Togo. I spend quite a bit of time in Togo, and I absolutely adore Togo. All right. But so my point in saying that is that it's not just Ghana. It's for all African nations who are going to be having this discussion, especially those who are going to be seeking reparations for the transatlantic slave trade and for those who they say are their descendants who were taken. If we are if we come from the same people, all right, or at least from the same place, because we are various tribes, all right, we are various tribes. Those that are scattered, I cannot have this video without saying we are the descendants of the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and some of Levi scattered to the four corners of the earth, as our word of Yah tells us would happen, okay, as our Heavenly Father has told us. But when we're discussing reparations, or you're discussing reparations and you're discussing it about us, don't just call some of us to the table, all right? Call all of us to the table. And no one is representing us, no one person, so don't select the people that you think would sit well at that table. Let us decide if this person speaks what we are speaking and shares our same sentiments on the discussion. And so that's my thoughts. I just wanted to ask you guys, were you invited? Because I didn't receive my invitation, but they will be discussing us in a couple of days and discussing their requests that they're going to make to the nations that took our ancestors enslaved. All right. They're going to be discussing getting reparations for those persons. And were you a blood descendant of those people? Were you invited to the discussion? Thanks for tuning in, and I love you all. Shalom.